trainers don't make a lot of money. You drive 30 minutes to a gym or a box or whatever. You lead a class for an hour, you make $20, you drive 30 minutes home, takes you all this time. Like, you're making $10 an hour. Like, what if you could just pop up a boot camp or a yoga class or whatever at a location that you want and make real money? Like, set the price. Sure, you have to hustle to get people there. Got it. Like, put the real work in instead of trying to win the fame lottery. Then I think that's an empowering thing.
Welcome back to the Fitt Insider podcast. I'm your host, Joe Veneri. Today, I'm joined by Jason McCarthy, a former Special Forces operator turned entrepreneur who bootstrapped the rucksack and events brand Goruck into a $30 million a year business. In this episode, we talk about Jason's vision to make rucking more popular than running, the importance of real-life social interactions, and his latest venture, Sandlot Technology, that aims to decentralize fitness. Let's get into it. Hi, Jason. Welcome to Fitt Insider. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Hey, I'm excited for this conversation. I was telling you a little bit offline here. Big fan from afar. I know you've been at it for a while, so I'm excited to get, maybe the full download and update on what's going on. But for folks who don't know, just introduce yourself and tell us about Goruck.
Yeah, my name is Jason McCarthy. I started Goruck in 2008 as I was transitioning out of the Army Special Forces. Wife was in the CIA. I built her a go bag, right? Which basically meant, that's kind of what we would do in the gun trucks in Iraq. We'd throw extra bombs and ammo and water and guns and radios and all that stuff in the trunk of the Humvee in case the mission went a little longer, our vehicle's disabled, we have to fight, we need more supplies, take your pick. So it's just kind of the mindset, the Special Forces mindset. And, it's amazing what a terrible idea of her telling me like, oh, Jace, when you move here, you should do the Goruck thing. And, I had shoved some stuff into an old assault pack that I had and like had her drive it around in her car with her. And I kept one at the house because they love a good coup in Africa, right? So I wanted her to be prepared. And, it's like, all right, well, you should do the Goruck thing. Because my plan was to go back into the government. And, life was just like, do you remember what it was like in America in like 2007, 2008 with the height of the surge, and we were just in the thick of it. And so life felt very chaotic. And I was just kind of rolling with that theme, and it led to, figuring out how to do manufacturing on the Goruck side, and then spending years doing that because I don't know anything about manufacturing, because I thought, oh, how hard can this be? Let's just do our own bags, right? Put an ad in Craigslist, New York City for a backpack designer. Found a team in Montana that did it. Helped us with GR1, and then figured out how to scale it domestically in the States, which was a completely different game to play. So a lot of bumps, a lot of bruises, a lot of scrapes along the way. And then the insult to that injury was when nobody wanted to buy it. Thought I had this great product, right? As if that's good enough. And so then nobody wanted to buy it. And I'm like, well, man, I'm in business school at the time. Like, what am I supposed to do here? Right. And I went back to kind of my roots again on the Special Forces side, because the rucks are kind of like Baghdad, New York City, both meant to thrive there. And it was like, all right, well, I'm just going to lead training events and, kind of like a boot camp, but with smiles and no yelling, and a day in the life of Special Forces training. And I'll take some cool pictures and I'll promote them on social media and all that. And like, it'll be something like it'll at least be playing the game hard. So did that, and immediately the first class was September 26, 2010 in San Francisco. And when we're hanging out in the parking lot at the end, everyone's just, worn out. And it's like they've had these rucksacks on stuffed with bricks for, hours and hours and hours, doing stuff in the surf and all over the city and over the Golden Gate Bridge and all this stuff. And it's like, it was just awesome. It was awesome, that feeling of camaraderie that we all had at the end of it. And so I'm like, all right, this is the Goruck I can get behind. And that's when Goruck kind of changed my heart through those early people. It wasn't just about the things. It was about building community and giving back, what I had learned in Special Forces and in war and in all my Special Forces training and in all that stuff, and giving it back in a way that I felt really good about. So that's when Goruck became Goruck to me.
it's awesome to see that evolve, and some of the aspects, like if you think about the pillars of the business and maybe how that has even evolved, right? So you have the rucksack itself and the bag, and then you have these events that you were doing. There's the aspect of now that's kind of grown into footwear and even some other types of apparel, and also brand and community. And those two things I wanted to maybe dig in a little bit, because so many people say brand and community, we're building a brand, we're building a community. And I think for you, given kind of the military background and this idea of bringing people together and making a difference and having an impact, were you conscious of that as it was happening, in terms of like, oh, this is what we think of as building the community or building the brand? Or was it just kind of more organic, and maybe how have you continued to like stoke that flame?
Yeah, so I'll start with the brand thing because that came first for me. And I want to go back to that time. I just got goosebumps actually thinking about that time in my life when I had recently transitioned out of the military. And, that's a really hard thing to do. It was a really hard thing to do back then as well. Just because it was so in the front pages of the news, the surge and all of that stuff, right? And and so I was trying to make my way in the world. And the one thing that I was absolutely not willing to do was to do something that would disrespect the regiment that I came from, the Special Forces Regiment. And to me, the regiment is almost an abstract thing. Like, yes, I owe the generation before me and I owe the guys who are still serving in the regiment. But it was simpler than that. It was like the guys on my team. And I'd served with, that I trained with, that I went to war with. And I was not willing to do something that would make them kind of blacklist me or be ashamed that they knew me or that they had served me. Like, I just wasn't willing to do it. And there was plenty of opportunities that came along, because if you're willing to play the Special Forces card, you'll get a few phone calls, because it's a great card to have, I guess. I mean, changed my life more importantly than the uniform or the tab or anything. And I think that's it's correct. Like, it is a really significant thing. So as I started to think about the brand of Goruck, like, yes, I kind of needed to tell my story and my past, but I had to do it in a way that honored it and that wasn't all about me. And that, and then I thought about, as I went through business school, it was like, well, to me, the brand comes first, and the definition of marketing is to communicate your brand. I understand that flies in the face of, your chief marketing officer is above your chief branding officer and all that stuff. But I mean, emotionally, for me at Goruck, the brand is everything, right? And so what does that mean? It means when we're building our stuff, I don't want our guys to get trash that has a name on it that I'm associated with, and then they're ashamed that they knew the guy that started the company that sent them this gear that they just don't want to use, right? Like, rule number one in Special Forces is always look cool. And so two things: it better look good and it better work really well. And so that's one of those things where it's just, when that is your Northern Star, you can ruck forever in that direction if the absolute and relentless pursuit of excellence is where you're going, and you hold yourself to the standard, which to me was just infinite, of those guys I served with. It's a really hard path, and it's really, really been worth it. And so as we get to community, this was a different kind of challenge, because, going out there and leading training events or events that are based on Special Forces training, and doing it in a way that doesn't come across as all jester, no judge, is like a problem, right? Like, it needs to be kind of a serious thing, but not like, you can't just always have, a big giant beard and wrap around shades, and you can't like talk about, all your war stories, and it doesn't work. And frankly, it didn't work for me to even like consider that, right? Because in essence, I needed to build a bridge between the military and the civilian worlds, and I needed other people to help me build that. Right. And we need to find our communities of trust and the people that can support us. And this is just kind of a happy accident that it happened through Goruck, but I needed to show myself that there was something outside of that camaraderie and that awesome time that I had inside of the military. And so it was a live action problem, man. I mean, it was like every step, every challenge, every class was me kind of pouring my heart into it in a way that, then I'm making phone calls to my buddies, right? It's like, hey, I need some more guys to help me do this because the response was positive from the people who showed up. And they're like, I don't know, man. I'm like, please come and check this out. And so they came and they're like, all right, I can get down with this because it's really physically demanding. Like the early, and we have lots of different options for events now, go figure, right? But the early days, I mean, you're meeting on a street corner at 1 a.m. You're getting bricks to shove inside of your rucksack. You don't know the route. You don't know when it's ending. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know the other people that are showing up. You don't know anything. I mean, talk about Fight Club stuff. Like it was Fight. There was nothing on the internet about it, right? I mean, it was in my head at the
That's how it
earliest
sounded
stages.
when people started talking about it initially. They're like, hey, I'm doing this thing and I'm meeting these people and I just show like it is all of those things as you're describing it. So yeah, it's crazy to think about how that has then evolved.
And so, I mean, and now you can read about it and stuff, but reading and feeling and experiencing are very different things. And so the community side to branch out of this is, to me, the communities have to share things. And one of the things that you have to share, well, back in the day, tribes would share defense and food, right? That's a community. Family is another word for community as well. It's a subset of community. You share things. You care about the other people. They care about you. It's a two-way street, right? The word community for everything under the sun, mattress companies have communities now. Like, come on, man, right? Like you want a little bit of that the magic that's in that word, but that's not a community, right? A community is in the real world. And also you treat people like you're in a community, right? I mean, not like you're in a forum online, but a real world community. You just don't say the things to people's faces that you see on something like the quote Facebook community, right? You just don't, or any of them. You just don't see it because it's people in the real world. You remember your humanity. So what happened at these Goruck challenges was the people that showed up, they came together and they had this awesome, challenging experience together. It brought them together. And we didn't care if you were black or white or military or civilian or purple or polka dotted or pink or gay or straight or any of that stuff. It's like, can you do the work on this team? Can you be a good teammate? Can you lift that log up with me and carry it with me? Can we do this together? And it was really, really inspiring, and it still is. I'm removed from leading these every weekend anymore, but man, it was really inspiring to see people of all different kinds come together and do this stuff. And what happened was these little pockets of people, they met each other and then they wanted to do more stuff together because like finds like. So active people, the kind of person that shows up to this kind of thing, right? Those are your people. And so then they started these Goruck clubs where they were. And they became community-led pockets where they would just get together. And sometimes they'd go, burn it down on a Friday night in the bar district. And other times they'd meet up in afternoon after work and bring some sandbags or some rucks and go for a ruck or do some training in the park or whatever. And it's like the best thing that we've ever created is this real world centric community that's out there that meets in the real world. Because I think that it's enormously gratifying and rewarding. And I think it does a lot of good for those people's lives, very much including mine, because I'm part of the community, not just the online stuff, but the real world stuff.
As you're talking about that, and I'm just thinking about, the past 2 years basically being shut in for various stretches of time, not interacting with people, the things that now have come to define, as people talk about it, community. It is online interactions and forums and Facebook groups and, people that maybe you've never met before. And that's cool. And that's great, right? Especially in times where that's all you have. But this element of like a shared experience, the in this case, shared suffering, right? That you're going through this with somebody, that you're finding your people in your tribe. And really there's, I think now more than ever, the need to have these like transformational, like meaning making events and experiences. Well, I guess maybe two parts to this question as I get there in a long-winded way. How has the past couple of years affected what you've been doing at Goruck? And then do you see this continuing to evolve in the direction of the events and experiences and an opportunity for that?
So it certainly has changed things for us. I mean, we went from just under 30,000 participants at these kind of live events to a fraction of that, right? To like 13,000. But what we did was we doubled down on further decentralization of, like, how do you define event, right? And if you say, hey, is Goruck an events company? Like, no. Goruck's revenue is now like between 1% and 2% are these events, right? If you rewind, here's for the kind of entrepreneur hustle side of it. Like, I used to launch a ton more events back in 2010, 2011, because people would pay me today for a future service, and I could then take that cash and I could put down payments on gear orders, which accountants will never allow, right? Because it's like funds and all this. It's like, man, I didn't know any better. I didn't know any whatever. It was like, I had the cash. This is what I got to do, right? Anyway, now we're in a different spot with our business. And so what we did was we essentially figured out, how do we go back? Because the secret sauce of Goruck is the community, right? The community is a big word, but it's really a community of communities, right? That unite around this central flag, if you will. American flag up top, Goruck flag below, right? At least in America. And so we said, how can we support these ruck club leaders? And there were 360 or something like that ruck clubs around the country at the start of the pandemic, and there's over 500 now. So we said, how can we better support them with, ways that they can bring their people together? So patches are a big thing at Goruck. I came by this honestly, right? When you pass Ranger School, which I did not, but they give you a Ranger tab. When you pass Special Forces Q course, which I did, they give you Special Forces tab. You put them on your uniform with your unit stuff, and you have all this. And it's like, all right, cool, And so that was what happened at these Goruck events, was you would do one and then you earned a patch. Awesome. It's not for sale. Not for sale. And so we went back and we said, okay, so we started coming up with we do these events called star courses. They're like scavenger hunts around town, all different distances, everything from 50 miles to 5K. You get a piece of paper or an email. Here's your hit points. Go to the hit points, and it's like waypoints. And then, you come back to the end and you get a patch. We opened those up entirely to the community and said, hey, we believe that you need to go outside. We believe that, that's safe. That's a risk that we're willing to take. And we did this early on in the pandemic. Like, here's a little nudge. Go outside, do this. We'll send you a patch. Maybe the Ruck Club leaders started organizing it. They started organizing other kinds of monthly workouts or monthly challenges that we started to put on. And it was, hey, you can do this by yourself at your house or in your garage or whatever. Or you can get together and you can organize your friends. The Ruck Club leaders can organize their friends, right? I mean, so what we basically wanted to do was free of judgment, right? Not on the left side, not on the right side. We did want to encourage activity, and specifically outdoor activity, and specifically outdoor activity together. That's kind of our way of life. And so meanwhile, at that time, we started developing some technology solutions as well to that. We had talked forever about building a Goruck app, which is fine. I never could really get behind it. And I'll say why, because, you have your community or your followers, and you say, okay, you can bake in a rewards program, you can bake in all this stuff, and it's great. And some percentage of them will adopt it. But the question as a business that we started to ask was, how do we get new people? So at Goruck, we have this big, hairy, audacious goal that rucking becomes bigger than running. And there's all sorts of physiological reasons, like less load on your body. Right. Every time you strike, it's 9 times your body weight onto your knee when you're running. It's 2.7 when you're walking, right? And so then you say, okay, well, if I have a ruck on and I'm walking, then it's still 2.7 because the gait determines it. Anyway, we can go into this, like 3 times the calories of walking, 1/3 the stress of running on your body from rucking. That's a really long-term play that takes a really long time to kind of see through to fruition. And in the meantime, we need to grow the business, and we need to do it in a way that isn't just Facebook ads or something buying mercenaries. And how do you actually do that, right? How do you actually get people that come into your brand and that are warm to it? so that it's not just, oh, I bought an email list and, like I sold to some percentage of them and all of that makes sense. Like, that's great. You can play that game until the end of time, man. And I've never been good at playing that. We've never been good at playing that. Like, part of the reason why the Goruck challenge came about was because I knew nothing about Facebook ads and Google ads. So it kind of said, okay, so a Goruck app is fine, but it's not really going to attract new people. It's just kind of a retention thing or a rewards program or whatever, and it will have to have e-commerce and it will have to do this. So, on our board is a guy that started, or he was the COO of Nike Plus through their launch, put 4 number 1 apps in the App Store. And we got to thinking about something bigger that would allow for this community of community that anchors off of these trainers who are the Ruck Club leaders, right? That bring people together, and that it's decentralized, and let them all kind of coexist into a single place where it does become kind of a community of communities. And naturally we can see that to the Goruck community and to all of the Ruck Club leaders. But then at that point, you have run clubs, you have Ruck clubs, you have, all these different types of communities that something like that can serve. So that's the other project that's been going on for since almost 2 years now.
Yeah, and so Sandlot Technologies, you're talking about, so as you build this, and this being separate venture from Goruck.
Goruck invested, right?
Gotcha.
And then BJ and I both put some funds in, and then our first partner was Niantic. So on the Goruck side, they're the creators of Pokemon Go. So we have a long-standing partnership with Niantic on the Goruck side, because we would activate at some of their live events, and they became friends since the time they were at Google. So before everyone knew about Pokemon Go Swarm in their parks, and so they kind of really believed in us from the standpoint of democratizing fitness and all that stuff, but go outside and empower people to use parks and trails and driveways and garages in a way that you saw people swarm to Pokemon. Like, we kind of brought some ethos of that, like a geospatial fitness app, if you will, to what Sandlot Technology is. And
that working towards, when you think about launch, rolling that out, where are you? And you said basically working on it the past 2 years. As that makes its way out into the world, what does that process look like? How are you approaching really ramping it up?
Yeah, so we have an MVP that's live. We're about to reboot it it's iOS only. Like the lean startup model of like iterate. And so we started seeding it to some early adopter Goruck clubs for just constant feedback on. The problem was in a true community, a true community building or communication software like this or app like this, like when Android breaks or it's not there, like the community breaks down and people go back to Instagram DMing and all these 50 ways that people have to communicate over when they're going to meet in a field and do push-ups, right? Facebook Messenger and all of this text message and then all this stuff, which hugely complicates why new people don't show up, right? And so we're about to launch it, February 1st, say, on Android, something along those. And then we're building towards a real world activation, the first ever fitness festival of its kind in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm based and located, and kind of called up all the Goruck partners in the Rolodex and invited everyone to come. And so we have kind of global thought leaders and brands and communities, and it's really a community of communities. So when we say Sandlot, what that means to us is we've invited a lot of these trainers, speakers, brands, communities to come and activate. So we're building an obstacle course. There's, Rogue Fitness is providing some equipment. There'll be plenty of, famous quote or trainers that you've heard of, we'll say. And then there's kind of like Fitt Talks, 1T in our case, where we're filming them like TED Talks. And then there's kind of panels that go along. So for a few days, and then there's live music. And so for a few days, people get to come and participate and activate their own bodies and meet other like-minded people in the real world. And we get to kind of put the technology on kind of full display, because it's a full scheduling thing. And, the way that the classes are scheduled, it all comes back to kind of the trainer in that model. So it's empowering. Probably sounds kind of complicated, but in essence, we've got a geospatial fitness app that's giving trainers all the power to kind of organize classes eventually they'll be able to set prices, how many people want to show up and where do they want to show up. That'll be completely up to the trainers. And then this is kind of bringing all of that to life, except here there's an admission, it's like a ticket. It's not like once you're in, you're in.
I think it makes a lot of sense, and it's exciting to think about the experience that you're bringing to it from having this kind of natural evolution of leading events and then other people leading events and then these communities forming. It's something that we've kind of talked about. When you look at different, your story in some ways reminds me of TRX and Randy Hetrick, who's like, hey, I kind of made this thing and I put it together and I didn't know how to make it, but I figured it out, and has certainly grown that business and it evolved over time. But also like a Camp Gladiator that is doing like these outdoor workouts and they're empowering people, but it's all kind of under their brand and they're managing it. But this idea of saying like, hey, here's a turnkey system that if you want to go out and meet people and host an event and charge them for it, whatever it might be, as long as people are coming together and being active and hopefully, getting better in some way, like we don't care what that looks like. We want to give people a way to do that. So it's kind of actually very organic, right? Out of that evolution of Goruck itself. So I think it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, what we did not want to do was to do something proprietary. Like one of the things that they'll teach you in special forces is like, don't fight fair. Like do not fight fair, because if you go into like, you might as well bring the Air Force with you. You might as well have the best weapons. You might as well have the best training. You might as well do all of that so that you stack every advantage that you can have. You need to have that advantage, and our advantage is not in jumping into the, hey, here's your virtual training app and here's the subscription model business. And, we want to attract everybody that won the fame lottery. Like everybody's doing that right now. That's what everybody's doing. And like the fame lottery keeps growing, and, other brands then pop up and they're a real brand. Like Camp Gladiator's a real brand. That's a real business, right? At some point you have to keep attracting people to your own brand, and that becomes a limiter over time. And so for us, it's like, sure, if someone's a trainer and they have a certification, or, like they get to pick, they get to pick where to go, what to do. It's just completely decentralized. So, the model that we saw, the economics were trainers don't make a lot of money. You drive 30 minutes to a gym or a box or whatever, you lead a class for an hour, you make $20, you drive 30 minutes home, or takes you all this time, like you're making $10 an hour. Like, what if you could just pop up a boot camp or a yoga class or whatever at a time that you want, at a location that you want, and make real money? Like, set the price. Sure, you have to hustle to get people there. Got it. Like, that's who this is for. If you want to like put the real work in, instead of trying to win the fame lottery, then I think that's an empowering thing. And so, I'm for decentralization. I'm for giving the big tools to the little guys. I'm for empowerment and kind of letting the marketplace adapt to that.
Yeah, it'll be very cool to see how that plays out. And one thing, it'll also, you mentioned seeding this with Goruck and seeing the opportunities to leverage that there. Circling back as we get towards the end of the conversation, as it relates to Goruck, I was curious to know, like, to the extent that you share anything publicly, how kind of big has the business gotten to this point? And you mentioned events being, a small percentage of what you're doing. So then the vast majority of that, right, is that coming from the bags and footwear at this point? And maybe what does that roadmap look like going forward?
Yeah. So, the interesting part is that early on, we tried to have some partnerships with apparel brands and footwear brands and stuff like that. And did not go well. Right. I mean, it goes back to the brand. They kept kind of wanting to attach to the brand of Goruck, but they wanted to kind of cheapen me or my past more than I was comfortable to do. Right. Like to make bad stuff, or some of them, they also made backpacks. And so they saw it as a threat. And those were just kind of messy conversations. I'm sure that there were partnerships that could have existed. There was an acquisition from a really big apparel company or footwear company early on, offer that just didn't feel right. But so to go back to supporting our own community, they kept saying like, well, what should I ruck in, or what should I, those kinds of things. And we kept saying, sure, we'll solve that problem. Right. And so, on the footwear side, we brought in the guy that invented the Reebok pump. He sold 1 billion pairs of shoes, right? Like, he's a shoe dog, man. And he manages that. And we kind of trade a lot of R&D. And then we have these built-in cadre and ambassadors that we let test all of our stuff. So it's kind of like it gets run through the gamut. You hear about people that, they go off site wherever and they rent, half of Iceland or something to put something through hell. Like we do it every weekend at these events that we're already putting on. So it's kind of a secret testing sauce for us. But rucking and becoming the rucking company, which we are, and continually taking the high ground on that. I mean, rucks are overwhelmingly our driver. I mean, we're a little bit sub, 30 million a year right now. No outside funding at all. We're profitable. Business is good, and we're just kind of driving it.
It's pretty incredible. You like at this point, all the work and kind of charting this course while maintaining staying true to the values, not only of yourself, right, but of the special forces and the brand. I think it's refreshing to hear this conversation and this path, especially like you talked about, not only from like the fame perspective and raising, huge rounds of venture capital and continuing to, kind of leverage now for what comes down the road. Your path, the word that keeps coming up, right, is authentic. So I think it's very refreshing to hear, and certainly inspiring as other founders are getting out there thinking about like, hey, how do I build something that has an impact that I can, be proud to stand out there and point to. So yeah, it's just really cool to hear.
I mean, the sirens call a lot, right? And the sirens are, hey, wouldn't it be easy if, wouldn't it be this or that? I mean, and look, if you go back to what do you want to do with your life? And to me, it's like a part of me says Goruck should be 10 times bigger, 100 times bigger by now. And we're just so far behind the power curve that it drives me crazy. Another part of me says, man, like in 2010, we did $53,000 in revenue, and that's a bad day now, And it's kind of like, I just, there's no correlation between your happiness once you reach like Maslow's base needs of community and support and medicine and enough to sort of sustain yourself. Like, money just doesn't make you happy. And so I believe in excellence and in going after the causes that I believe in with all my might. And I believe in building the best business that I can around that. Like, this isn't some stated desire to be a mom and pop shop forever, right? I mean, we're stated goal, rucking is bigger than running. Started a technology company with the old COO of Nike Plus, like that could scale to whatever. Like, we're doing the fundraise circuits. We've got a couple other investors through the Niantic channels. I mean, it's a different world over there. It still starts with this fundamental problem that we just believe in, is we want real world communities to thrive. We want people to be healthier and more active. Our way of life does not involve, the metaverse. I believe that is very much a dystopian nightmare, as John Hanke has said, right? Like, this idea that we're just going to be so private and live our lives on a screen, like, it's not working. And so I'm for training and physical fitness, right? I just think that there's mental health and there's social health. And when our whole life is wrapped into everything and all the avatars and all the badges that we earn online, we have to remember that we're still Homo sapiens, and we need to get out in the real world and breathe fresh air. And we know all of this is true, right? We know we need to go outside. We know we need to see other people, but all of the economics of everything is pointing us to stare at our phone more. And so we want to make technology a tool. We want to bring people together in the real world, and we want to build that off of some trust, right? That works, and that we can build a great business around that. And from the Sandlot Technology side, does that mean it's going to be a bigger business than Amazon? Probably not, right? It's going to be it's going to have an opportunity to impact the people that are willing to go with that way of life. And technology as a tool, like we want to make it easier for people to remember to go outside, to meet their buddies, to go to the park instead of like, you walk around these big cities, man, and it's like Friday night and you'll see people, on the like Stairmaster staring out the window with headphones on, and there's rows of people doing this. And I'm like, I'm glad that you care about your health. I've actually been there and done that. And I was not in a happy stage in my life when I was doing that. And I find that you can be really happy if you pour more of your energy into other people and into spending time with them in the real world, your family, your kids, your friends, the friends that you don't know yet because you're staring at your phone too much. And you need to go, someone, when they invite you to go work out in the field, go work out in the damn field, man. You might meet some really awesome people that are like-minded. And when you do that, that opens up so many other things like, hey, want to go grab dinner? Hey, we're doing this other race over here. Let's go do it. Hey, next summer, we're going to go climb a mountain. Do you want to come? Right? And action begets action. And so that's kind of the underpinnings of the way of life that we believe in and are promoting and want to really make that part of what people want to do and make it easier for them to do that.
I think that's really amazing. Those are a lot of the same things that, I often think about and, down the path of questions that I wanted to ask you that you just crossed off the list one by one in terms of technology and at-home fitness and wearables and all of these things that are positioned as health and wellness and fitness when, hey, if that works for you, that's fantastic. And I think the more people that choose to live a healthier lifestyle, more power to you, right? But also the elements of coming together, building community, forming communities in person, meeting those people, being physically active outdoors, really powerful that way. Kind of last question as we look to wrap things up here. Down that path, is that a matter? Do you feel this need or desire to then go out and kind of message everything that you're doing at Goruck now and Sandlot as, hey, we are this alternative to the metaverse, to fitness, to digital fitness, to connected fitness and health? Or do you say, hey, by us doing it and bringing people together around it, we'll attract like-minded people and it will grow that way? So is this like an external like war that you feel like you need to wage, or is it more a matter of like, hey, we're going to do what we're going to do and things are going to kind of play out in our direction?
Well, I think it's both, frankly. I mean, defining what you're not is like the hardest thing to do as you build a business, at least according to me, is to cut through the noise, to get your first true adopters, to get your first big fans. And like, because once you have those people, if this is a big if you build something great, then they will tell their friends, right? So our job becomes to force multiply them. Some of that is through the technology itself. Some of it is through the way of life that we lead. I think the problem right now with not picking a fight is it's really hard to cut through, right? It's like, it's really hard. And so I think that we're going to have to pick a fight a little bit more. And to be clear, like there's going to be, virtual on the Goruck world, we call them anti-virtual events because we encourage people to do them together, right? So even if it's piped through your phone or it's a remotely organized challenge, we encourage you to go find a friend and do that. But there's no money in social health. There's not. That's why nobody is serving that market, right? Except like restaurants. I mean, that's it, Like, hey, come together, meet people. Restaurants and bars, there's social health there, but it's like kind of health, But you come together and people do that and people need that. And so, I don't want to be just the anti-hey war on Facebook guy, so to say, but to get people to recognize these things, like I think it's important to point out that none of this is working, right? Like anti-social media is not social at all. It's anti-social. It's not making us, Facebook is teaching us to play crush candy and hate our friends. And like, that's not healthy for anybody to like sit there and stare at ads and like learn to get all into the politics side of everything because, Uncle Joe's posting whatever and that feed is going to find you because everyone hates it or they love it or whatever, right? Like, how about we take some health stuff off of that so you don't even have to open it up and present like a way, not in an angry way, right? Like, I don't want to get on the bull pit and like start screaming about like I'm so mad. I'm not mad, man. Like, a part of me wants to kind of just like live my life, I know this way of life. I learned it in the Army. It's very fulfilling. I have my kind of community of trust that I'm around that I get a lot of value out of, right? And then hopefully I provide value just through friendship with them. On the weekends we meet in my driveways. We burn it down with some sandbags. We drink some beers. We talk about the world. It's great, right? It's great. My family, my kids, my wife, like, life is really good here. And yet, at a really, really deep-seated level, like, I feel like I learned so much from the opportunities that America and my country and special forces and those guys gave me and what they taught me that I feel like I owe. And so that way of life, it really burns brightly inside of me. And I want more of us to lead that way of life. Not exactly how I do it, but in a way that works for more people, because you will be healthier, you will be happier, you will be more fulfilled. You will start to prioritize the things that really matter in your life. And that's empowerment. And our nation needs that. Our people need that. Like, and so that this is the hill I will die on, right? Is getting people to see that way of life. And at the end of the day, man, I'm going to keep leading that way of life. And it's a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear you talk about it. And I think probably now folks are listening, you got some of them fired up to run through a brick wall and, come meet you in an event. So we'll wrap it up there and actually get you out of here by telling them, where can folks learn more about Goruck, keep up with what you have going on at Sandlot, and just connect in general?
So Goruck is Goruck on all the... It's like, now I feel like, should I call it anti-social media? Should I call it social media? It's like, look, we're not sitting here taking moral high ground from, like, we're on social media, right? It's how we communicate with people. We're just trying to push people towards the real world. And so we have a really big fitness festival. You and your brother and anybody that's your friend is very much invited. Like, I have massive respect for the work that you guys do at Fitt Insider and everything that comes through my inbox and all the insights that you guys provide. I think you provide a fantastic service that connects a lot of dots. And so we're putting on this really big fitness festival called Sandlot Jacks. It's in Jacksonville, Florida, April 21st to the 24th. There's global thought leaders, there's trainers, there's kind of like Fitt Talks, aka TED Talk style things on all sorts of different health. And to me, that's mental health, social health, and physical health. You get to participate. You get to be in some classes. You get to discover some new stuff. You get to climb some obstacles. It's on the river. It's Florida. Florida's the capital of freedom these days. You can be outside and love it all the time. It's great. So that's where I'd love to meet people. I'm also on all the social media stuff. You can find me there. Send me any notes. DMs or stuff are very, very welcomed. I try to use those platforms for what they are, which is, there's real people out there that are buying the products, that have feedback. And I never get tired of hearing people's stories, and, feedback is a good thing. I think, I learned the hard way that silence is a terrible thing to get from people. So feedback is welcomed. And I hope to see you at Sandlot Jacks or in a park or a trailhead or something near you.
That's awesome. I appreciate you making a few minutes to chat with us today. Definitely, grateful for the kind words and really glad to hear that the Fitt Insider stuff is making its way to you and you're finding it valuable. So we're hopeful we can continue to do that. But yeah, otherwise, Anthony and I are talking about trying to get to Jacksonville for the event. So hope other people check it out as well. And thanks for being here today.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.